Hey everybody, welcome to Fearless and Free to Be. Today I am speaking with my friend Hillis Pugh. Hillis and I are going to be talking about his new program for activating your light body. So I'm really excited to see what he has to say about that, using Lemurian frequencies and all other out of this world energy. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him in now and we'll take this conversation forward. Hi, Hillis. I was going to say good morning, but you're on the East Coast, so it's not really morning for you. Still morning for me, not so much for you.
Well, see, this is where it's always apropos to say good day, because you never know what time zone you're in.
Oh, that's a great idea. Good day. Good day.
Good day, fine lady. How are you?
I'm really well. It's been interesting. The energy playing out on the planet right now has been really interesting, and yeah, I'm excited for us to keep moving forward out of this kind of stagnation zone we've been in for a while.
Yeah,
So
aren't we all?
yeah, the great pause button we've been sitting in for a couple of years.
That's a good way to think of it. Is this great pause button, because it's kind of feels that we have been in the space of energetic pause, in the space of readjusting,
Hmm.
to the ebb. And so now as things begin to flow, it's like, what do we do? What do we do? How do we really understand what this flow of energy is as we move into this new space?
Yeah, and I think this pause button, yeah, I was saying to someone a few weeks ago, this gift that we've been given, it doesn't feel like a gift right now because it's very uncomfortable. But really, it's been necessary for us to be able to move forward. So we're in the pause right now of it's time to sit and pause and reflect. That's really what is happening with humanity right now, is pausing and reflecting about what's really important. While it's causing all kinds of tension between friends and family, it's also causing us to reflect what's really important. And it's a necessary pause between the old world and the new world. So the old world we've known for thousands of years it's crumbling, it's collapsing. We knew this 10, 15 years ago, that the time would come when everything would begin to collapse, and that's part of what is happening right now. Is our belief systems are collapsing, our realities are collapsing, and my understanding is that the third dimension is actually flatlining. So I was actually shown that a couple of months ago. I'm like, what, flatlining? Yeah, so it's being flattened.
Yeah,
And so it's really uncomfortable for people. And sometimes, we're in a transition, and transitions are uncomfortable.
it
Uh,
is. They can be very uncomfortable, especially if you are one that is not used to change, because that's what transition is. Transition is stepping into a space of change, stepping into the newness that we are creating individually or collectively. It's really allowing the soul or the person, the individual, to mature. And as this energy matures, so does the collective.
mhm. Yeah, and it's interesting because I hear people say, I can't wait till things get back to normal. Uh, we're- they're never going to go back to normal. Right? I mean, that's old world. Why would we
Yeah.
want to go back to the way things were? Because we have the ability to go forward to something that is so much better.
Well, there's always the comfort, the idea of comfort when we step back into the old.
Mm,
It's that familiar space, so it's that safety. And that's what people want, is that safety, is that level of comfort. It's like, oh, this is just like, you're sitting on your couch and you're having a warm blanket or having comfort food. Is that place of safety, something that's familiar, and that's what people want.
right.
And so, until we allow for people to really step into that new space of comfort. That's what it is, and that's part of the reason why I also created the Lemurian Light Energy, light body activation is, to create this new space of comfort for people.
Yeah, because people do need something that they can move into. It's funny you're showing that sitting on the couch with a blanket and watching their TV shows, and it's like, ah, man, somebody took my blanket and they took my remote away, and I have to get up.
Yeah,
Right?
that's
I actually have
exactly what
to
it
move.
is.
I actually have to do something new.
Yeah, I mean, and so it's interesting too because when I turned 40, which was 5 years ago, and I looked at a picture of myself when I was 1 year old, I was on the kitchen table sleeping with an apple in my hand. And my quote for my 40th birthday was, "Some things never change," meaning that I love to this day to eat apples and to take naps.
Hmm.
And so, what am I going to do when someone takes those away from me? I don't know, because no one can, because those are mine. That's part of my identity. That's part of who I am. I mean, for 45 years now, it's like apples and naps.
Right. And so they can't take away who we are innately.
No.
But the issue is that we have so many attachments to beliefs and to things and how we think things need to be and how we think other people need to be. And I really started to see, actually about a year ago at this time, because of what was happening within my family, that my greatest suffering was actually in my attachments,
Mm,
not in the relationships and the connections to the people, but in my attachments to who I think they needed to be and my attachments to how I think they need to act. So the suffering actually isn't, it's like the deciphering the difference between connection and attachment. The suffering isn't in the connection, the suffering is in the attachment.
yeah, it really is. And I'm glad you brought this up because this has been in my energy field for the past couple of days of, as I'm in my own personal transition now. And what is really interesting, and so I do plant medicine, and some of the Icaros, some of the songs that they sing in ceremony is actually one line of one of the ones is give up all your attachments and allow yourself to become humble. And I was thinking about that, and I thought about the Buddhist and monk teachings is that all the suffering is, as you just said, in the attachments. So when we step into that space of attaching, what are we attaching to? What is the idea we are attaching to? Going back to what we talked about moments ago, to how people want that space of familiarity, that space of comfort. That is the attachment because, when we are in the space of comfort, we are attached to that space of comfort because it gives us ease, it gives us security. And so that's what people are attached to, the idea of security, there's the idea of stability. And so when anyone has that removed from their lives. I know I've had that happen to me a few times.
Mm-hmm.
When you have your job taken away from you, when you have your apartment, you're getting kicked out of your apartment, or a relationship ends. It's all these spaces of transitions that have great comfort, and then there's the process of when we have something taken away from us, whether if it's a loved one or a possession, is that space of grief. So
Mm-hmm.
now feel that now we are in a space of collective grief because last week, um, as we entered into a new cycle, we are now beginning to enter into 4D collectively. So as we enter into this fourth dimensional space-time energy, it is now we have to allow for that grieving process to take place so we then can now, so it's like, okay, what am I attached to now? Is this important for me to hold on to this? And so it is in that space where now that we're in, we are evaluating and reevaluating who we are and what is important to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up 4D because, as you know, that's one of my favorite topics because it doesn't get talked about nearly enough.
No.
and that as the 3D collapses, so 4D, for those who don't know what that is, I mean, everybody's talking about 3D to 5D, 3D to 5D, right? So that we have to go through the 4D in order to get to 5D. And that as 3D collapses, so what I was being shown is that the veil of deception is being pulled away. As the veil of deception gets pulled away, that's what happens. We all collectively move out of 3D. It actually gets flatlined, it gets collapsed, and basically ceases to exist. So the collective of humanity suddenly goes, oh my God, what was that? And they suddenly see everything, because the deception, the veil is torn away.
Yeah.
A lot of religions talk about the tearing away of the veil, and that's really what that is that the veil between the third dimension and then our ability to lift our consciousness into higher levels of consciousness. So as the 3D collapses and that veil of deception gets pulled away, that's very, very, very uncomfortable for people, because they are so attached to how they think things should be. And they're attached, like you said, they're attached to their jobs. They're attached to the restaurants they go to. They're attached to how they do their shopping. They're attached to their friends and family. They're attached. And so it's about having to learn how to reframe from attachments to connections. And then as we let go of what used to be, there is a grieving process that everybody goes through. And that once you wake up, when things get removed and the collective reality gets removed, to really be patient with ourselves as we move through this collective grieving process. And and I think we're going to see more of that moving forward, because only some of the truth is being revealed. Yeah. In what I was shown a couple of months ago, well, years ago, I was shown that the truth would be coming, but a couple of months ago, what I was being shown is that it's been slowly trickled, so that humanity has time to adjust, so that when greater truths are revealed, it doesn't come as such a shock. But people are like, oh, that's real? I'd heard that, but I didn't think that was real. So they're being allowed to hear about it right now, so that as it becomes real, it's not as painful as it could be if it hadn't been trickled out across the airwaves beforehand.
Well, I'll be honest, I'm ready for the Band-Aid just to come off.
Yeah, and a lot of us are, and that is what, well, as I was saying, a couple of years ago, that's what we woke up early for.
Yeah.
Right. So a whole bunch of us woke up early, so that when the Band-Aid gets ripped off, the veil gets ripped off, that we're able to help the rest of humanity process it.
Yeah, indeed. And I'm glad we're talking about all of this, because one of the things I want us to really move into before we talk about the light body activation is that, people always have these dates and time markers in their head about what's going to happen to when. But what I want to really express to people, that as we are now on the winter solstice this day, another transitional point, the past, I think it's been like 4 weeks, because we've had the lunar eclipse, and then we had the lunar eclipse on the new moon, and then we had the solar eclipse, and then we had the full moon, and then we have this portal open activation, that portal. And so we had all these energies. And so what I want to express to people, that as we move through these energies, because we were in this particular grouping of energies that we're in, because we first had to walk through the shadow of the energy, which is the eclipses. It's really understanding the shadow energy, the shadow of ourselves, and really allowing who we are underneath everything else to really be anchored in, for us to really see and understand and say, okay, this is really me, this is who I am, and accept that. Accept the opposite, or the darkness that some people wish to call it, but because that's who we are. We are this total being, one of both light and dark, and it's how we nurture that to bring balance. And as we have walked through the shadow energy, we allow ourselves to really anchor into the light and really to allow the portal energies for to be open for us to really comprehend what it was that we have seen in the shadow, for us
Mhm.
to allow for the depth or the ascension of our souls to be seen. And as we're moving now into more of 4D energy, because that's what we're in now. I mean, the 4D energy started, I believe it was just over a week ago. And now we are moving deeper into that 4D energy where things are going to be revealed more and more. But as to what comfort
Mhm.
people are ready to live in that space, are they going to continue to deny what they see and feel, or are they going to allow themselves to be open up to say, okay, this is it, hands up, I'm done.
Right. Right. And and really understand that the process itself of recognizing our shadows and doing our shadow work, um, to really be patient with ourselves in that process, because
Yeah,
processing the shadows can be painful. It's interesting because we're in the, like I said, the transition phase for humanity. It's like we're in the moving the caterpillar that's going to the chrysalis, right? And that
yeah.
breakdown. And is that scary for the caterpillar when everything it knew as a caterpillar is suddenly coming to an end, and it basically regurgitates and builds a chrysalis around itself? I grew caterpillars over the summer. It was kind of a not intentional, but I ended up catching a monarch butterfly, and she had babies, and I grew caterpillars and then set them free as butterflies. So I got to watch that entire process. And I had no idea that the cocoon is actually their insides coming out and then growing up around them. So there's this complete dissolving that the caterpillar does from the inside out
Mm.
as it goes into that phase. And so that doing the shadow work is just that. It's doing the inside work.
It is. It's and this is, what scares people sometimes, is when we, because, me being this Lemurian light being, this being, that's been here on the planet many times doing what I do. And what I find interesting, what I find most fascinating is how, people, not everyone, but how there's this randomness of throwing shadow work around, just throwing the phrase around.
Mhm.
But it's to the depth of acknowledging what it truly is.
Mhm.
And the reason why there's fear around it is because, people are like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with that. I want to bypass. I want to skip all of that. I want to get to the good stuff. Well, I'm like, well, the good stuff is on the other side of that.
Mhm.
And so when we allow ourselves to sit, not wallow, but just sit in a space of comfort, to acknowledge and truly understand, um, that, yeah, I did this or I did that. Own, excuse my French, but own up to your shit, basically.
Mhm.
Own up to who you were. Own up to who you are. Own up to, you know, letting go of the idea of you. And that's what the shadow work is mostly, is owning up to the idea of who you are and who you were, and who you are around your parents, who you are around selective friends, who you are at work, these varying identities that we allow ourselves to create to allow us to fit in different spaces, to create another layer of comfort,
Mhm.
to allow us to have this, okay, well, there's work healers, and then there's, friend healers, and then there's out all night dancing healers, and then there's like all these different versions. But there's no separation in any of that. It's just another label, identity that we allow ourselves to be a part of. And so when we allow ourselves to think, okay, this is it, I'm done, enough with all the labels, we allow ourselves to merge the self-contained identities into the wholeness. And this is what we are going through on a collective level as well, where we are shedding the identities of humanity, the individual identities of humanity that people identify with, with with all the labels. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with creating labels, nothing wrong at all, but it's just how you identify with them and what's the purpose of that label. It's just right now the shedding, if you will.
Yeah. And really coming into being who we are authentically. And part of the shedding, one, a lot of what I do is I help people shed their beliefs, because that's a big part of it. Is we're carrying around layers and layers and layers of fear-based beliefs that we've built on ourselves throughout our lifetime. And part of the shadow processing, I don't call it shadow processing, I call it life processing, but it's that same kind of thing. It's right, processing everything we believe, and about ourselves, about each other, about life, about everything. And then as we start to peel off all those different identities, as you were saying, we come home to who we truly authentically are, and then learn to walk through life as one, and not be afraid to show up in any of those situations authentically as who we are.
Yeah, exactly.
So who I am with you is the same with who I am with my family. It's the same as who I am when I'm at the grocery store. It's the same as who I am wherever I go. And not everyone's going to love who I really am. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm good with it.
Yeah. And if you have to tear yourself down to I really dislike that phrase, tear yourself down.
Oh, it's awful.
I know. Why do people even use that?
So I call it peeling off. I call it peeling off the layers of who you are not, to get back to who you really are.
Well, and I guess and I never really thought about it until now. I don't even use that in the work that I do. I usually use, terms like self-discovery. Because that's what we're doing, when we allow ourselves to participate in the work that we do, and just, for everyone who's watching, what I do is not so much different from what any other, Reiki master or other energy practitioner does. What makes me special is the fact that I channel my energy from galactic and sources, which imbues me with the power to do what I do. And so, not to be boastful, but hey, if I can, not if, but when I connect to the center of the galaxy, the central sun of Sirius, and Sirius A, B, and C, which I've spent lifetimes on each of those planets, connecting down to the Dogon tribe that lived in Africa. So it's like all these different energies. And so, yeah, I'm proud to do what I do. I'm proud to connect to the energy that I connect to. I'm proud to be of service to people in this capacity to help humanity. And that's what I do. That's what I love to do most than anything right now, because it's my passion, and it's who I am authentically. I mean, as you see, it just brings me a smile on my face just talking about it.
Well, it's interesting because what you're talking about, and it's not out of arrogance or boasting or any of that. It's out of the true heart of being of service to humanity, and I call it heart work. So, how many people are going through life doing hard work? And if they can just shift that language to being your heart work, then it isn't work anymore. It's more of you're playing from your heart's light, from your heart's energy. That's where you're coming from.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly it. And it warms my heart to see the transformation of people who I work with. It really warms my soul. It warms my being. And I can get a little emotional just talking about it. How it just warms my heart to see people who are ready to allow themselves to be vulnerable, to say, I worked on this in the past, but obviously there's still some more allowing, releasing that has to be done with this. And so when we allow ourselves to step into that vulnerable space, even I myself, when I step into this vulnerable space, it just allows me to be more present. It allows me to be more of the facilitator and the mentor that I know that I am for people. And because, you and I couldn't do what we do if we haven't done and been in those places already.
Absolutely. We teach what we know, what we've experienced, what we've been through. And I think that's one of the things that's so funny, because I'm reminded the coaching industry, right? Nothing, that's part of the old worlds.
Yes.
And I laugh about the coaches who coach coaches to coach other coaches. They're not, think about it, right? There's a whole industry of that, and they're not actually teaching their own methodologies. They're not teaching what their own experiences. They're just teaching what they've been taught by somebody else who taught them, and by somebody else that taught them, and somebody else that taught them. That, for me, that's also part of the old construct.
Yes.
Because this new reality we're moving into is all about each one of us teaching genuinely from our heart, as a result of our own suffering. It's like, this is what I went through. This is what I found worked for me. And I'm sharing it with you because it made such a difference in my life. I didn't learn it from somebody else. This comes
Yes.
from my own heart-earned wisdom.
Yes. And I'm glad that you said that, because I've been on your show a few times, but just to refresh your guest, when I went to study for my Reiki level 2 Reiki, and it's like, there's got to be something more. There's got to be something different out there that's of greater energy for me to be of service, to help other people. And this is when my teacher now showed up to attune and teach me the ways of Lemurian and Syrian energy. And his story touched me in such a way that it's like, yes, this is the one I'm supposed to learn from. How he expressed the challenges that he faced in his life, and how he overcame his challenges by trusting the energy that was shown to him, and how he has done it. And I'm like, this is what I'm meant to do. And then as I learned from him, I took what I learned, and still learning actually, and modified it to where it suits me, to where I then can be of service to other people. Because this is the beauty of what this planet is. We have all these abilities, all these teachers, but we can all learn the same thing and teach them differently to assist any and everyone else, because everyone else receives differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you allow yourself to be in the space of receiving that particular energy, because my teacher, he's a bit aggressive, in the energy work that he does. He's, very like hands-on, very aggressive, and just gets in there. While I'm a bit more gentle in the work that I do, more calming. And I feel, for me, that's more effective, as opposed to, in the work that I do, with the people that he work with, they like that aggressive energy. So we all have to have that balance and that finite energy in that place in the world.
Yeah. And I think once we understand that, the people who are intended to work with us will gravitate to us, whoever that is. So some people need the push and the tough love, and some people don't do so well with that.
No.
Some people need the gentle, soft guidance, and to really, I think this is more about the student understanding themselves more than anything else. And
Yeah.
I'm being reminded of the old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yeah.
And that for each person to really understand where they are, and really start to gravitate to what kind of teacher am I looking for, and being open to recognizing that teacher, the way that you were when you saw your teacher. So your teaching style is very different, but you still recognize that that teacher was the teacher that could help you further on your own path.
Yes, exactly. Because I appreciate the people who I worked with in the past to bring me that gentle space and that gentle energy. But for what I needed to work through, I needed that aggressive, that just goes right in there, that to open me up. And it did. It opened me up to allow me to present the energy to humanity that I have. And so I'm very appreciative of that.
Yeah, I do better with the gentle guidance, but I do have one person that I go to when I need a good kick in the butt.
I
And I'm
think
like,
we all need one of
oh,
those.
oh man, that hurts. Okay, you're right.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes me a couple of weeks because it is really painful when I get that kick, right?
Yeah.
The tough love.
Yeah.
And then after I sit with it for a while, I'm like, okay, she was right. But man, that hurt.
I love it. And so since we're talking about it, do you mind if I go ahead and discuss
Oh,
about
yes,
the
please do. Yeah.
so, since we are in this transitional phase of getting into 4D energy, I was guided long time ago, well, not long time ago, maybe about a month or two, to create this light body activation. And the purpose of this light body activation is to accelerate humanity, accelerate the individual souls, because when each soul is light body is activated, it helps the collective energy, the collective consciousness. And so what I do is in this 45-minute session is to where I then allow for I teach about the tools that I use, everything from the crystals to the devices, everything that I use in the meditation. So I express and teach and talk about that. And then from there, we move into the light body activation portion, which is where we, sit in a space where I create the space to activate the dormant DNA energies in the body using Lemurian and Syrian energies, by using light language, by using different frequencies and energies to help assist and guide you into a space of ascension, into really starting to open up and connect to your crystalline body, because that's what the light body is. Light body is the crystalline energy that we're moving into. This activation just helps to accelerate that just a little bit more.
So talk about the light body a little bit more. Because I know that so for me this is old news.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, I'm, oh, this is such old news. And I realized, and then a friend of mine who is also a spiritual teacher said, it's old news for you,
Yes.
but it's not old news for a lot of other people.
Yes.
So the community, the audience, my particular audience, a lot of them are what I call spiritual newbies.
Okay.
So can you explain to them further what the light body is, why it's so important, how it relates to us in our human experience, and then what the Lemurian and Syrian energies are? Maybe explain a little bit to people
Yeah.
what Lemuria and Syria are and why their energies are so important to our human experience.
Definitely. And so first I'm going to explain what the light body is. And for me personally, most people may differ, but light body and crystalline body are interchangeable for me because they are the exact same thing. Light body, crystalline body, to me, same thing. And what that is where uh, we are first made of organic energies. We are made of planetary energies of the earth. This is where we come from, this organic matter and material. And so when we are in this organic body, and as we allow ourselves to live in this 3D space, this is what we have to align with and what we are connected to cohabitate with Mother Earth. And so as Mother Earth, as she is going through this ascension process, right, we have to ascend with her because we are in this relationship with her. So to have this relationship and to cohabitate, we have to allow ourselves to then become more of light and of crystalline energy. And so what the light body is, it activates the 12 strand DNA that's dormant inside the body, because we have 23, 24 other strands of DNA that's not active. And so the purpose of them being activated now is for us to access additional information about us, about our soul, our Akashic records, all the missing elements, all the elements to help us remember who we are. So that's the sole purpose of it. And so then eventually the organic body will transform into crystalline light body. And the purpose of this is that we become more in alignment with the energy of the earth frequency. Because I'm not sure if people heard of the Schumann resonance, and if people have heard of 40 hertz energy, being blasted on down to the planet, is to help with that transformation inside the body. And so as she evolves, so do we into
Right.
this light form. Yes.
So that planet herself is shifting from being carbon based to being crystalline based.
Exactly.
And her light body is being activated. So it's about us staying in the same resonance as the planet herself.
Right, to have the physical experience, because as we are in 3D, we have to stay in physical resonance and energy to have that experience, to be in that space. And so as we allow ourselves to have that space, we then allow ourselves to expand and grow, because that's what it's about now. It's about the level of expansion into the moving from 3D into 4D and then into 5D, to have the physical experience. But then it'll be greater because it'll be physical crystalline light energy where we could do all this magic.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. You were talking about the 12 strands of DNA. And I don't know if a lot of people understand. So scientists a few years ago have determined that we have a bunch of junk DNA. They don't know what it is. So science calls it junk DNA. We know what it is.
Right.
It's not junk DNA. It's just inactive. Right. And it's being reactivated. And it's also referred to as our true divine human blueprint. So our divine human blueprint is intended to be fully active.
Yes.
And when our blueprint is fully activated and restored, because it's just been shut down, once it's restored, we'll be able to create magic, for lack of a better word, right? Manifestation, create a world where fear ceases to exist, where everything that is fear-based, which is war and strife and lack and suffering, all that doesn't exist when our light bodies are fully activated, because they're all based in fear. And fear, darkness can exist in the presence of light, and fear can exist in the presence of love. So that's what this activation is, assisting people to be able to move what I call up the spiritual spiral.
Yes, and I'm glad. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, that the more light we become, the easier it is to shed. I've never heard this before. The more light we become, the easier it is to shed our shadows, to do the shadow work, because rather than it being hard work, which it's been in the past, the lighter our bodies become, the lighter our resonance become, the easier it is to do that shadow work. It's not heavy and hard.
Yes. And I'm glad that you talked about the divine blueprint, because that's what I actually do also in the activation as well. I've done it so much that sometimes I forget about the little pieces of it. And one of the little pieces is through this session is that I also do a bit of soul retrieval in this to bring in the other missing fragments. And as I bring in the missing fragments, I do also activate the divine blueprint. And so the importance of the bringing in the soul fragments is so that way in this moment you feel whole, you feel complete, you understand where your soul fragments were, you understand, what they were doing, you get to understand the wholeness that you are. And when activating the divine blueprint, you get to connect to source creator energy as well as yourself. And so you then get to see and understand, not in some people who have done this have seen it immediately. Other people have seen it, over the week afterwards. So it's really, you get to understand your path, your purpose, your divinity in this particular activation to understand what your role and contribution is, and not just being stuck in this stagnant energy that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm. And what a gift that it is for
Mhm.
humanity. And so here's what's really interesting. When one person has their activation experience, it might only feel like it's one person, but
Right.
every person's resonance has the ability to impact. I think it's one person in the vibration of love has makes up for 1,000 people in the vibration of fear.
Yes.
So
And and
it
what's
isn't a huge number of us that need to go down this path of love and light in order to transmute it for the entire planet.
It is, and what's even more interesting about this is that when you are sitting in this energy, this activation, or just meditating in general, you can affect anything from 1 to 2 miles around you.
Mm. And every person within that circumference.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And so whether they are aware of it or not is, how aware of their level of consciousness. But it's a powerful thing when we come together and we sit in this space of divinity, this space of love, this space of joy, and just really exude what it is that we are meant to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's beautiful. So, what are the Lemurians,
Oh,
energy,
yes.
and Assyrian energy? I'd like to learn more about that.
So a lot of people know about Lemurian energy, and sometimes they mistake Lemurian for Atlantis. And sometimes there's this interchange, oh, Lemurians, that was Atlantis, Atlantis was Lemurian. No, completely different energies, completely different civilizations. Know that Lemuria was here first. And the Syrian energy. And the reason why I'm backing up here because it's important to express that the Syrians, especially from Sirius B, but the Syrians from A, B, and C, because there are three, and Sirius C is the dwarf planet, the smaller of the three planets. And so when they chose, or when volunteers decided to come here to populate or to create or assist in creating another civilization like Sirius, and the other far reaches of the galaxy, when they decided to inhabit another space, they chose here. And so when they got here, they didn't choose Lemurian. They didn't choose the name or title Sirius. They brought the energy, they brought the technology, they brought all that energy with them, but they called it Lemuria, and they were Lemurians. And so the importance of this energy is that it comes from the center of the universe, the galaxy is the center energy, the central sun. And so when you have Syrian energy channeled to Earth, it then cultivates into Lemurian energy, or at least for me. But I channel directly from Syrian or Sirius. And so when we have this energy, this divine galactic energy, it then allows us to tap into not just the Syrian energy, but also the energies of the center of the earth, where there's Agatha, and when you have the crystal cities. And so it really allows me to tune into that energy as well, which assists in bringing it up and raising the vibration, pulling the energy up, and then spreading it out to where it needs to go, whoever I'm working with. And so that's the importance of me working with the Syrian and Lemurian energies, even though there are slight differences in when I channel, when I use light language, or when I create or utilize light language codes. They are all pretty much the same in their purpose. It's just the matter of what needs to be used and when.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I hadn't heard of the Syrian energies, but I knew about the Lemurians and how it was so light and so loving, and
Yeah,
it's a very divine feminine energy,
it is. It
where
is.
where a lot of people don't understand that Atlantis was very masculine,
Yes.
not not the way we think of feminine masculine now as, men and women, but and it wasn't the toxic fear-based feminine and the toxic fear-based masculine. It's just that they're two completely different energies, and both of them in a sense are still playing out on our planet. But it's as we bring the higher vibrations back from those experiences, because they did exist on our planet at one time. They're really still here.
Yeah, they're still here, and actually, Lemurian energies are still well and alive, and even becoming more prevalent in the energies of Hawaii and the energies of the Philippines and these other energies that are around the planet. Because as we move uh, into securing this 4D energy, we are moving into more of this masculine and feminine divine balance, because that's what it's about, and that's about this divine balance of this energy. And just want to also restate something that, the Syrians were some of the first human inhabitants on the planet. So this is where the Lemurians came from, was the first inhabitants of Syrians. Syrians were the first inhabitants, which became Lemurians. So yeah.
Okay. I thought it was Lyrians, but maybe they came at about the same time. Or they're
Maybe I'm not too familiar with that culture with them, and I think shortly after, I think they came in. The Lyrians and the Palladians may have came in around the same time, but the Syrians definitely were the first.
okay. So, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
People can find me any and everywhere on social media.
I think that's great, you.
Well, exactly. Yeah, the people can. Well. I'm about reaching my limit on Facebook as far as friends, but people can find me on anywhere on social media. But the best way to get a hold of me is at hillispugh.com. That way you can, if you want to schedule a session, you can go there. You can message me, find me, friend me. I'm open. I'm receptive to all love. But for right now, you can visit the link in Victoria's description to activate your light body.
Yes. So Hillis and I are both part of the Ascended Masters store. It's this beautiful cooperative environment that we've created to help provide humanity with extraordinary products and services and events and teachers. And it's part of this new earth creation, right, of cooperation. So in that space, there's no competition. It's even beyond collaboration. It's basically a co-op, right? We call it a win-win-win. As one wins, we all win. And
Yes.
so we're here supporting each other and working together, and then making this available to humanity so that humanity wins as well. It's such a beautiful space to be in, where it's just delightful.
Yeah. I love it. I love being a part of communities like this, and I had the pleasure of meeting you. I think, well, before you were even on the store, I think, I met you through Kimberly. Yeah, that's how that happened.
Yeah, and through April and Jay. And this is what's been fun. It has been literally like a family reunion.
Yeah.
There are people in the community that I've known for years. And Jackie Lappin, who I had planned to interview on Wednesday, but she's having foot surgery, so I can't interview her till next week. But I was like, oh my gosh, Jackie. known her for years, and she's on there. So it's just been this amazing, like I said, like a family. And Sherry Ashana I've known for
Yeah.
years. And all of these people coming together and bringing their gifts and bringing their tools and bringing their teachings and just unifying in this wonderful space and making it all available for humanity. And there I, as I was saying to, well, April and Jay, who created this concept, this is what I was starting to see about a year ago. It's time for us to start creating our co-ops. And this is one that is thriving. And then there are other ones that we're going to start seeing show up, because the way that we make a difference in the world, well, if we want to change the world, first it starts inside of ourselves, right? But if we're going to create a new world, it's all about us working together in unity and harmony for the highest and greatest good of all concerned. So this idea of competition is, I laugh now. I'm like, competition is just absurd.
Yeah.
It was created to keep some to create win-lose, right? The idea that some people grow and become this grandiose know-it-all, and everybody else somehow has to lose.
Yeah.
That does not serve humanity.
No. And just want to also mention really quick that my timeline might be a little off, but I do plan on launching a Syrian School of Self-Mastery in the spring of next year. Well, everything that I've learned in the past 10 years, everything from my teachings with the gratitude to my Lemurian energy work, is all going to go there, and I'm going to be opening it up to other masters and other teachers as well.
Oh, that is great. What a great idea. It's interesting that the idea of academies for learning is something I started seeing a few years ago. And I think we'll really start seeing more and more and more of that, because people are looking for alternate education. Imagine 5 years from now if kids went to those kinds of academies instead of learning things they'll never use in their lifetime.
Right? I mean, come on. I mean, who knew that, I think this was like 20 years of schooling, that you only use maybe 2%, maybe even no more than maybe 5% of that in your life.
Right.
Like every single day.
It's education just for the sake of education.
Right.
It's programming for the sake of programming. It's most of it we never even use.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's necessarily a bad thing. If you're someone whose gift and propensity is mathematics, by all means, follow your bliss and learn all that extraordinary math, which my brain just doesn't even comprehend. Because my bliss is spirituality. I knew when I was little I was a creative, and I had a just a strange gravitation to spirituality, not religion. I would ask the question of religion didn't make sense to me, but somehow I spiritually understood things, and now I'm following my bliss. That is my gift. I now understand I have what's called a high spiritual IQ. And there are some people who have a high mathematical IQ, some people who have a high language IQ, some people who have a high athletic IQ. How about we create our education systems to further embolden our natural gifts rather than forcing a creative to take geometry?
That would never work.
Right. And then they wonder why they feel like a failure because they're failing at math.
I know, I hated math. I was more into English. English was my jam. I could sit down and write all day. Still can, actually. But it's just now that my level of articulation and my level of communication has allowed me to be expressive in this spiritual fashion, to be of assistance to humanity, because it's what I love. I mean, I could sit here and talk to people all day long, and I have, and it brings me so much joy, because there's no greater expression of really sitting and really allowing for the messages to be brought forth, to help other people, because you and I, we've seen what this life was like. We've been on a path of many things, of many feelings, and the sole reason why I do what I do is to make sure that people don't feel alone in what they
Right.
do.
Well, and I think that's it, that people feel alone. There are a lot of people who have the gifts and the propensities and the interests that we have, and have felt alone because they were not acceptable.
Yeah.
Right. And so we're opening up the windows and saying, come on, there are so many of us like you. It really is okay to be yourself.
Yeah.
It's safe to be who you are, and to follow your natural bliss, and to follow your gifts, and to really, that's part of what when we talk about the fourth dimension being difficult. The other aspect of the fourth dimension is that this is where it all wakes up.
Yeah.
Right. So the one aspect of the fourth dimension is having to process all the things that we aren't, and that part can be uncomfortable. But the good stuff of fourth dimension is that's where all of our gifts get reawakened.
Yeah.
You get
All about that. Remember. Yeah. And this is something that I'm going to have to really sit with in meditation and for a while, because just before I, got on air with you today, I was saying to myself, I am such an old soul, very old. Why is it taking me so long to remember how to use certain things in this life?
I have that conversation too, because like you, my soul is very, very old as well. And it's that same thing. It's like I know what this human body is capable of. It's so frustrating to not make it do what I know it's capable of doing.
Yeah.
And it's because we've been living in this very dense, the third dimension is very, very dense. It's heavy and it's thick, and it's fear is very heavy and
Yeah.
oppressive. And so as we lighten our bodies, and again, going back to the light work that we do, that you're doing, is that as we lighten our bodies, we enlighten them, then the enlightenment of our gifts and all of that starts to be shown to us.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's one thing. It's not you just wake up and go, oh, I suddenly remember. We have to be. It's again, doing all the work to let go of everything that isn't that, so that we do remember who we are, and that our what I call cellular memory gets reactivated.
Yeah.
Right. And
Indeed.
that happens when we start to let go of everything of who we are not, and all of our attachments to how we, going back again to the attachments of letting go of the attachments of how we think things should be based on what we were told our reality needs to be. Because the
Yes.
reality we actually have access to is so much better.
It is so much better. Just thinking about that brings me joy.
Yeah.
Breathe into that one, everybody.
Well, thank you so much for being here today with me, and for bringing your light and your love into this conversation, and for being the extraordinary being that you are, and for all the love and the light that you are bringing into this world, and for the light that you are radiating. And for all of you who are watching, thank you for being here today. Thank you for being the light that you are. And as I always say, remember to hold your light so high others can't help but see their own light. Together we are creating a world of peace, harmony, freedom, and prosperity for all life on earth. And as always, get bold, be fearless, and live free.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.